Hello, and welcome to No Format, the only talk show on the internet. I'm your host today, Aaron, and I'll be talking with Scott Hamilton of Ken Mode about whatever we feel like. But before I get into that, I'd like to mention today's sponsor, Kanto Hot Sauce. Kanto produces all-natural, artisan, small-batch hot sauce in the heart of Canada's breadbasket. Right now they've got 3 fantastic flavors available for sale: apple basil serrano, coffee and ghosts, and for a limited time, Ceresis and Red Death. All of them are available individually for $15 plus shipping, or you can pick up all 3 in Kanto's Trinity Pack for only $40. And if you order now using code Aaron, I'm sure Kanto would appreciate that very much. Coming up next, we've got music from Adolyne. Thank you all for tuning in.
It's like really S&M-y and really it's really overtly sexual and like I think that at the time like that was Rob Halford freshly coming out, and he came out in like leather shorts and eyeliner, so it was really intense and you know, if you'll excuse the pun, hard to swallow for people, I think. So it was like but I still have it. I love it. I think it's really good.
You know, I think I do have one record like that in particular. It's not a Rob Halford record, but do you know that really notorious Morbid Angel album that came out that everyone just hated?
Well, I don't actually know how to pronounce it. It's the one that's in Latin, right?
Yeah, it's like
I only know how to mispronounce it based on a Needle Drop parody that I saw. It's because the guy mispronounced it Isla Dive in a Man's Anus.
Yeah. It's Illa Divinum Insanus, I think it is.
Yes.
I'm not entirely sure. My Latin is a little rusty.
Yeah.
But I heard
at least you tried to pronounce it. I didn't even try.
That's okay. I've got Google right in front of me to pull up resources. I understand that it's a terrible album. It's a terrible Morbid Angel album, but as like a industrial metal album goes, I'd say it's like a pretty solid like 7.
Okay, I've never listened to it before. I don't have like a Morbid Angel history. Like when they're on, it's fine, and I recognize when, like, you know, if someone's playing it for me and I go, yeah, it's pretty good, but like they just don't speak to me, so I don't have that, like, I heard it and it didn't do, like, I wasn't offended by it the way other people were, so it just, like, I didn't, you know, like, I mean, a lot of the reason why it got so much press is because of the abject reaction to it from people who really, really love Morbid Angel, but I just kind of don't give a shit.
Oh yeah, totally. I understand the overreaction, because I'm not a huge Morbid Angel fan. I've heard some of the records. I was going to say I went to go see them, but no, they were not there. It was just Scrape and Pantera. But
I saw that show in Saskatoon too.
Oh hell yeah! It was a hell of a show, let me tell you. But I understand. It's like experiencing, I don't want to say Saint Anger, because that album has its defenders now. It's more like experiencing Metallica's Lulu, which I think.
See, that's a weird one for me too, because I also, and this is a lot more divisive, is I don't really have a Metallica history. They were never one of my bands, as a matter of fact, like, which is not to say, usually if somebody says that to me, it's them going like, I grew up with hardcore, and I didn't. I grew up listening to metal. As a matter of fact, my introduction to Metallica was a friend's older brother taped me, he dubbed a cassette for me. One side of it was Megadeth, one side was Metallica, and I returned the tape to him and asked him if he could overdub the Metallica side with more Megadeth. So I've always had a team on that fight. I've never been a Metallica fan, so I was never disappointed in them either. As a matter of fact, one of their songs that I actually really like is one of the Load songs, that I really non-ironically think is a really well-crafted song and will listen to, like, without, you know, tittering at it, I guess. But
which one is it? I gotta know.
Until It Sleeps. I love it. I think it's a great song.
I think from a songwriting perspective, that's pretty spot on.
It's a really, really solid song, and I don't have that baggage of going like they cut their hair. I don't care. And as far as Lulu is concerned, I haven't sat down to do it. I have a bunch of friends who we keep on talking about, almost like a ritual. We're gonna sit down and listen to that from front to back at some point. But like, I like Lou Reed, so I have a completely, like, I know Lou Reed better than I know Metallica. So my perspective on Lulu is gonna be so totally different. What little I've heard of Lulu, I thought it sounded like dog shit, but some of Lou's, like, lyrics were actually pretty good, and like, if I'm and it is so oil and water that I mean, I'm gonna be assessing Lou as it goes on and not so much Metallica, because the Metallica portions of that just sound like bad bar rock, like, from what I've heard, and Lou just sounds like latter day Lou Reed, like, kind of reciting poetry. He doesn't even sound like he was, like, aware of the music from what I heard, so, like, even that's a weird thing to me, like, and like, as far as in the Saint Anger thing, like, I mean, I'm so, like, also conversely, I'm a really big fan of Some Kind of Monster, the movie, which I thought was absolutely brilliant. So I have, like, a totally separate bag attached to that record as well, and when I hear it, like, I'll never be able to safely assess that record in a fair way, because, like, to me, Metallica's that band from that movie. So I mean, they're just kind of funny to me most of the time.
I mean, that's pretty funny, considering considering, like, all the baggage that goes along with it. It's funny that you can't even, like, listen to it objectively because of that.
I would give it a shot. I'm just aware that, like, I like the movie too much. Like, I think it's too like, they're cartoon characters first to me, and I like, and I would do my best to get past that. Like, from a film viewing perspective, like, I always try to do my best to, like, whenever I'm seeing a Michael Bay movie or something like that, I always go, like, maybe he's going to be really good this time, because I want every movie I watch to be the best movie I've ever seen. I always want to be surprised by how good it is, and, like, that happens on occasion. And I want to give that movie the benefit of the doubt. Records, like, I try to treat the same way, but there is something different about sitting down to like I'm not going to be able to sit down and listen to I don't know, a Disturbed record and not like immediately start like, you know, feeling weird organs I didn't know I had clenching and kind of reacting oddly. Like, I mean, and Metallica just falls into that. Like, I'm too aware of the cartoon of Metallica to be able to take them as seriously as they probably deserve to be taken. But like, I mean, that's just the road I took. Like, they were that before they were a serious band to me. Which is backwards, because I had tons of time growing up where they should have been. I'm a kid who grew up on metal. I should love Metallica. Like, the time period is perfect for me. Like, I was like pre-teens when Black Album came out. That should have been like my first big record, and it wasn't. I didn't respond to it at all.
Well, you know, I mean, we all have different influences growing up. I don't think I was acutely aware of Metallica until I got significantly older, right? My first few records were like Hootie and the Blowfish and Soul Coughing. Those were like big albums to me.
Soul Coughing's I actually don't really know that band. They had one song on the Songs in the Key of X soundtrack called Marked Helicopters that I actually quite like that song, but I don't know the band that passed that song.
Yeah, they were apparently like huge in Minneapolis. They sold a ton of records there. For some strange reason, but Minneapolis is kind of a hub of weird music, really, if you think about it. But yeah, I mean, you know, there are tons of bands that I should have known growing up that I've never really like dug into. I've never sat down to sit through an entire Led Zeppelin album.
See, they're an interesting one for me too, and another place where I make myself, I guess, unpopular insofar as I didn't grow up with them, but I did grow up with Black Sabbath, who are like, I mean, if I had like gun to my head, I'd probably have to say are my favorite band, even though they're not like their track record isn't great from front to back, but like they made the music that like I started playing music because I listened to them and said like I could probably I would like to do something like this with my life. Like they made, because all of the I've talked about this in interviews before, so you might have heard me go over this, but like I've like all of their catchiest stuff is all the easy riffs to play. So when you're like a kid and you're just trying to get your head around how a guitar works and you're just sliding a power chord around, you can play Black Sabbath songs, and like it was their stuff was really empowering to me. But conversely, at the same time, I was hearing like, oh well, you should be listening to Led Zeppelin too, and I didn't respond to it. Again, it always comes back to like I just like my heart wasn't in it. Like I can recognize good stuff, and I understand why people like them, but like I have too much music that I do respond to spend a ton of time on them. Now, recently I listened to, like 5 years ago maybe, I listened to all of their stuff, like every studio recording from front to back, and I've done that with a lot of bands that I try to get, or at least like appreciate, and I did appreciate it. I get it, and I definitely understand how influential they are, but I on my own time will not go back to them. They don't move me significantly. Like same with the Beatles. The Beatles don't move me. I've listened to all of the stuff. I've watched the anthology. I've watched so many movies. I actually like their like movies, like their weird narrative movies. I like those more than their records. Like Hard Day's Night is an awesome movie, and I get what they did to the culture and how important it was, but I don't for enjoyment really get like if Eleanor Rigby's playing the background someplace, I really like it. I like the string arrangements and stuff on it, but and I like the narrative too. Like I like that song. I think it's really great, but I don't want to listen to their records. That just doesn't interest me.
Do you feel like you feel obligated to listen to these artists like the Beatles, Led Zeppelin, Black Sabbath's later era? Do you feel like there's an obligation to you as like a musician to
for
get
my
these?
own edification, like I think it's I do think that if you're going to I enjoy the process of going backwards in dissecting this stuff. So like I enjoyed listening to the Beatles. Actually, one of the times that I did that with the Beatles, it was when I was reading Helter Skelter, because I thought it would help get me in the proper mindset. I thought it would be a more sane way to read that book than to listen to nothing but the Manson family family jams, because a lot of those get like, which I did listen to some of them while I was, but it just, you know, they're distracting to listen to. But you know, I enjoy the process of listening to it and get like trying to get to the heart of it and seeing connections to the music that does matter to me, because I know, like, you know, well, like the Sabbath thing, like you know, they were enormous Beatles fans, and you can hear it. And I like being edified on all that stuff, but it just, you know, when it comes down to me being in a mood to listen to music that I need like companionship or a soundtrack to something I'm doing, like they will never be my internal soundtrack, and that's kind of it. I don't feel a responsibility, but I do like that kind of I don't want to overblow the I'm making it sound like I'm overblowing the importance of like what I think that my like musical knowledge base is, but I like being notified, and I like being able to you know, trace the lineage back. I do think it's important. As far as the later Sabbath stuff is concerned, like I think that they're just spotty. I think that they're and that's like later on their records get really spotty. I think there's good songs on all of the records. I just think that they made weird production decisions. I think that some of the band, like some of the lineups are stronger than others, and but I think that they, like, all those records shine at one point or another. I think that there's like kind of a myth surrounding the Tony Martin era stuff that none of it's any good, and I think that that's like patently false.
Yeah, I think you can say that for most bands. I remember back when I'm not a Kiss fan, but they released that Psycho Circus album. Yeah, and
I saw that tour, actually.
Oh, hey, there we go. My friend was talking with his friend, who was apparently a big Kiss fan, and you know, he was saying that there was one good song on that album, and the rest were ballads. And you know, far be it for me to judge anybody who loves a good ballad, but you know, there's certain things that you expect from certain bands.
Well, see, Kiss is a great example, because they're a band, like, I don't have an enormous attachment to them. I do like certain songs a lot, but they're a band that has informed one of my favorite bands, that being the Melvins, so much, and so obviously if you listen to old Kiss, like, and the Melvins wear it on their sleeve. They love Kiss, and like everything down to, I do think that Buzzo's probably, like, audibly to me, one of his biggest vocal influences. It has to be Gene Simmons.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And Gene Simmons sucks. Like, nobody likes Gene Simmons. No one wants to own up to being, oh yeah, Gene Simmons is a like cool, influential guy. Like, he's absolutely not a cool guy. But like, I mean, you also can't just throw him, like, I mean, and people love to, because Kiss is easy to pick on. They're so easy to pick on, and they should be picked on. But it's like, I mean, I'm not going to say that that they have no good songs. That's preposterous. But I mean, they're definitely not one of my bands. But I definitely have spent a bunch of time listening to them from kind of a musical archaeological perspective, like looking at how much influence they had on bands that I do dig, and the songs that I like by them, I love by them. So, you know, it's they're actually a great example that falls into that canon a little bit.
Yeah, I was actually doing something similar with regards to David Bowie, and not just like classic Bowie. I'm talking about 90s Bowie, when he really started getting into electronic music, because that's
one of my favorite eras of his, actually.
Really?
I love 90s Bowie.
I can hear why, because those are probably some of a lot of people are going to say that the 70s and 80s work that he was doing was pretty experimental, but I think as far as like his more notable works, The 90s Bowie, that's kind of like where he was really pushing himself to do things.
Yeah, and it's interesting now because some of that stuff, especially from like a production standpoint, is a little gaudy. I think the songs on Earthling are really great. I think his performances, specifically, and that was all the way down to the end. I think he made really interesting vocal decisions like for his entire career. Yeah. But especially in the 90s, he started doing some really ugly, odd things and challenging things that I think that in concept are really great and sometimes don't hold up in terms of his approach to them, but I mean at the time that's the only way you would have been able to approach them. The guitar work is always really, really acrobatic and insane, but some of it is like the Reese Gabriel stuff. Like I like everything he does, but I think in a lot of cases it sounds horrible. Like just his squealing, screeching, like pinch harmonic stuff is really over the top, and it's always really hot in the mix, and it's a little much. But I think those songs are like verging on bulletproof sometimes. Like that, I think the album Outside for me is the big one from that era. I love Outside. It's so diverse.
Yeah, and that's definitely the one thing that you can say about a lot of these artists, which is kind of why I had the idea originally to do this stupid review show that I had been thinking about before, because there's so many of those albums out there that I feel like they're just written off and they've been sidelined to the point of just like being ignored. And I feel like even in those experimentations, there's a lot of like interesting minds that you can dig from that I feel really don't get their due in some regards.
Well, hey, you do it and I'll listen. I think that's an interesting, like a really great place to start from that. So I mean, especially the more controversial the better, because that sounds really lame to say, because it sounds like start with some controversy, that'll be good for the show. But I mean, the more like we're getting into issues of taste here, and if you really feel like you can empirically defend something that's that maligned, like that's interesting. Like if you have just a strong stance, a strong opinion on it, like that's I think that's of course that's very compelling.
So is there anything that you love that you feel is unfairly maligned?
My mind always rushes to that 2 record. I've had other ones though. Let me think. Because again, it comes back to that. Like whenever I've seen that decibel article thing pop up, I've always like. Part of the problem with this is that I'm not really particularly embarrassed by anything that I like. If I think something's good, it's because I've done the math and I feel strongly about it. Like I don't, what's a good example of something? Like I mean, I don't. What do I listen to that maybe like starts like towing the line of being in like the new metal territory? Like I really like the band Amen a lot.
I love Amen.
Yeah, but so you'll know then that they get kind of unfairly couched with all that new metal stuff, and they tour with a lot of those bands and everything like that. But like on record, they even shared members with some really trash bands. But on record, they don't have anything to my ears in common with all that stuff. But I feel like there's a case to be made that I could be like having to defend that stuff, and I find that very funny. I don't know, the two the 2 major label White Zombie records or something like that. They're very popular, but like critically into like people that we know, our friends or whatever. Like that's the type of thing that you have to defend your opinion on. That's a good example. And actually, I bring this up largely to do because I think like some of the internet channels that both of us have been through over the years have been in the kind of all these little noise rock niche boards and stuff like that. And I noticed somebody posting something about the Irish band Therapy on one of those boards and getting completely just shit canned and just like kicked around like crazy. They're one of my favorite bands of all time.
That's just so bizarre to me, because I think out of all of the bands that came out of like that period, Therapy was actually really well regarded as far as I was aware. I mean, I think they even did a song with Ozzy. I mean, not to say that doing a song with Ozzy is like bulletproof, but
they had a period where they were very high profile. They had like they basically, there's an argument to be made in North America at least that they were kind of a one-hit wonder band because they had one huge single and one huge record, and then after that, like, I mean, a lot of it has to do with like their like record company falling apart and that type of thing. But they also didn't make it easy on themselves, and they have like, they're a really diverse band. They're all over the place. They don't they don't really seem to be concerned with pleasing anybody, which is funny because that goes two ways, right? That's both. They don't seem concerned with like, you know, like they had this one big hit record, and the logical thing would have been to follow up with something that was exactly like it, and instead they did something that was really off-putting to the people who dug that record. But at the same time, they're like very melodic, like they never went like, you know, off-putting to like in a lot of cases means like, oh yeah, they went really hyper noisy and got really hard to digest. No, they were still making pop songs. They're still a pop rock band, but they're just, there's something in, they're so idiosyncratic that they you know, like they're just a hard sell for whatever reason. And I feel like they are a band that it's not with layman rock people, because a lot of the time if you put their records on around people like that, they will go, hey, this is actually pretty good. It's cool kids for whatever reason have a really hard time digesting that band. I don't know what it is about them, but I love them. But yeah, whoever it was that posted that, because their early stuff is really noisy and really weird. Like well, I mean, maybe grand scheme of things, not that weird, but like, I mean, at the time they were, I mean, pretty lo-fi and atonal and strange enough that like there's no reason to like throw a fit about them getting posted on a message board. But this poor guy that posted them was just getting the shit knocked out of him by all these people who were, you know, adhering to the rules of this little subset of music. So like, like that type of thing, and that, I guess that shows where my head is at, because I'm less like, you know, the types of music that I feel like I'm in a position where I'm defending a lot more often are not, major stumbling block moments for big bands, and it's more like particular bands that are very uncool to like, but that I think are like artistically very, very easy to defend. Yeah.
And I feel like there are a surprising number of artists like that out there. Like, I mean, it's just weird to me that people would be so down on that particular person for posting Therapy.
Oh, I thought it was bananas. That was one of the that was one of a few incidents that made me go like, I gotta pay less attention to what's going on in these. Like, I was becoming more and more aware of what the rule subset looked like for like, you know, it's the group of, you know, outcasts banding together, and then a new social strata starts developing, and eventually somebody's got to be the coolest guy in the room, and we're back to square one with, you know, someone has to be the loser too, and it's so silly to me.
Yeah, that's just bizarre, just because we're all coming together as this band of like social rejects, and then we reject somebody else. So
yeah, I mean, it's built into humans being a trash species, but.
So, I mean, coming back to ignoring people who talk trash online, do you find like you've had to do that with regards to your work?
Not in a while. Earlier on with Adolyne, there was some. I should be just happy that anyone's ever paying attention to Adolyne at all, because we do fly under the radar for folks a lot.
I was just gonna say, I honestly didn't even realize that you had Adolyne until I think it was, oh my god, like 2017, like well after I had started listening to Ken Mode when you were in it.
Well, I mean, that's something actually, like the Ken Mode guys have given me a little bit of shit about. They've said like, you need to use the fact that you're in Ken Mode a little bit more to like drive your other band, and I just feel like I've been friends with them for so long that when I joined Ken Mode, I got a little leery about like I didn't want them to think that I like joined up with them so that I could go and like launch my other band or something like that.
Yeah.
So but I'm still, I don't know, I've been in the band for like 6 years or something now, and I still bristle against that a little bit. But they've actually said here and there, they've said like you need to get over that and just like be okay with that, because you're a member of both bands, just be fine with it. And I'm gonna on the next round of Adolyne stuff, because we have a lot of stuff coming up, I'm gonna try to do better, because ultimately I would like for this stuff to find a home. But earlier on, when we were still finding our footing, I think that some of the criticisms that the band received were absolutely they weren't outside of the realms of reality. I think that there was we were failing in public a lot early on, and so I mean it's hard to hear, but it was some of it was stuff that I was agreeing on, because it was a period where we were still trying to get our shit together in terms of what it was that we were as a band, and what the ultimate direction was, and when we were within the band struggling to agree on that, and it took a lot of doing to get us to a point where, I mean, ultimately I feel like I won out, because the band, by the time our third record came out, we were the band that I wanted us to be in the first place, and and starting from that point, I haven't really noticed a ton of people, like, I mean, most people, if they don't like us, they'll just ignore us rather than give us a hard time. So I haven't noticed a ton of stuff before that, but like prior to that, when we would catch shit, sometimes I don't think that I would I wouldn't even always necessarily disagree with it. Like, we just, bad reviews and stuff like that. But I mean, it wasn't like, didn't keep me up at night. Ken Mode's a little different because of the visibility, and like people who were in that, a bracket, a few rungs up, where like people can be really flippant and shitty about it in such a way that denotes that they don't really know. They haven't spent more than 30 seconds actually assessing you, and so it's impossible to take personally. I just, even the proper reviews that we've received, sometimes I'll take a look at them. Like if somebody says that was a particularly harsh review, then I'll look at it, and I don't know. I just have a really hard time taking that stuff personally. It doesn't really get to me, I guess. So I don't index it. Like, I'm sure. I mean, I'm sure more people hate what I do than like what I do. I'm sure a lot of my friends probably hate what I do, and they just don't tell me. But there's no necessity on their part to tell me, so I don't hear about it, I guess.
That's good. That's good, because let me tell you, the things people are saying online would bristle your hair. Let me tell you.
No. Well, see, and I'm not on those boards anymore. So I guess if anyone is ever talking about any of my bands, I would be mercifully missing out.
No, honestly, I think the overall response to, especially, was it success, and more so loved, I would say, has just been very, very positive. I haven't seen too many people saying really horrible things. So
coming into Ken Mode on Success was weird, because that was the one that, like, I mean, that album got them the most pushback I think they'd ever seen. They'd been ignored a lot more on certain records, but that record got, I think that just because of like who we worked with and how it was released and everything like that, it was like, it just ended up, it resulted in a very, very divisive release. And I mean, I think that there are certain realities to having a record be like split a room like that are they're formidable for sure. Like, I mean, like, it's easy for me to say, oh, I just ignore it, but I'm not the one who's handling like the finances in the band, and it does make a difference, like when website X or Y says like this is no good, it affects things, and it means like the shockwave of that can result in like we have a little less money to go and do what we want to do, and I get that, but from a like personal perspective, like I guess see like hearing you say like both of those records ultimately were probably received quite well. That's the general consensus that I've gotten, but I also acknowledge that I'm not going to hear about all the negative the same way. Like no one, like my friends and family aren't going to post bad reviews on my, or like email me that stuff, and so I just try to be realistic about it, because like I mean it's already over. I've already done it and I can't really take it back. So I know that I like them an awful lot. So I don't. So just especially with the Ken Mode stuff, it's easier to walk away from and know that. Like Adolyne's really, really, really tricky for me to enjoy in any capacity, but Ken Mode, I was a big fan of the band prior to being in the band, so it's easier for me to like step away and go like, that's a really great song. I really like that, and I think both of those records are good, which is not to say that I like hang out and listen to them. I haven't, like, I'm a little shocked sometimes when they do come on, or I don't know, someone requests them on my radio show and I've got to play something and I go like, oh yeah, this actually sounds really good. But I do, like, I mean, I know that we made them earnestly and with integrity in mind, and so like I don't worry about it. It's not no trouble to me.
Well, I think hearing you talk about how there was like such a backlash to them, that kind of like reiterates the point in my mind about how important critical reassessment of all art is really kind of necessary. There's so many pieces of great art out there that just flopped on their release. Like Blade Runner, that movie was just. Was it?
Well, I mean, so many movies too. See, and you're opening a can of worms in that, because like professionally, I'm connected to like my day job is in film, and I've in terms of like globally, it's almost easier to talk about how art is processed on a global front, looking at movies, than it even is at music, because of like flopping in one market will dictate that piece of art doesn't even wind up hitting other markets until like maybe 2 decades after it was released, and then everyone in this very particular like this thing that came out in Massachusetts maybe doesn't work so well in the States, but it really makes sense to a bunch of these weirdos in Brussels who are running this boutique label that are going to put it out, and everyone's going to go like, well, why did we miss this in the first place? Like it's nice if this stuff ever finds an audience at all, even if it has to be after the fact. But I mean, it's I think, I mean, and in some cases when it comes to art too, some of this stuff was maybe made to be appreciated 20 years from release date, which is no consolation to the people who are like burning money making it. Like, I mean, it's it's hard, and like if you say like your what is that Back to the Future line, your kids are gonna love it. But I mean, knowing that you're going to find your audience. I can't remember her name. Sybil Bayer, I think, is the name of the woman. Is a really good example. Somebody who did these basically like home, as I understand it, these like home folk recordings that have just now been being released. I think her stuff, I think she recorded it in the late 60s or something like that. And I don't even know how it started being circulated, but I've noticed it popping up on like, Emma Ruth Rundle and a lot of those Sargent House type people. Like, it's very, very in keeping with some of the more folk end of that. It's very dark, and I can see why it didn't make sense to folks at the time. Although I don't even know if it was released properly at the time, mind you. But it makes more sense now than it did then. I think like it's very of the climate, and so like I don't know. Art's really tricky that way.
Yeah. I think it's one of the things that we're fortunate about now, living in the age that we are, where we can obsessively find this stuff out like very easily. So
I don't know what your life was like, kind of like when you were a little bit younger, but like finding information on art in general, like and at least in a city like Saskatoon, it was not easy. And I was lucky enough to have like a few particular video stores, and I lucked out by seeing a few particular titles that sent me down a path. And I wasn't told I didn't have people around me telling me what was cool and what wasn't, and so I was able to naturally make those decisions for myself, and that turned me into, I mean, the fuck up I am now, I guess. But it's you know, like, circumstances are very different now, and like the accessibility for folks now changes everything, because I mean, at the time, you spent your money on the one thing that you had enough money for, and you'd better hope that you dig it, because that's that. Like, you have to be really choosy about the records you buy. You only have enough money to rent X amount of movies that week. Hopefully they're the good ones, because otherwise you're just going to think you don't like movies, and you're going to think that, culture sucks, and you're going to, that's how disenchantment happens. You get, you fall out of love with experience. Like, I mean, that's, so many people don't really connect with, they have art in their lives, but they don't really connect with anything. Everything's just background noise to them, and I it's no wonder to me that happens to people with the way that we have art thrust upon us. It's the whole thing's very interesting, because on one hand we have a point in history, in memorable history, where accessibility was an issue in terms of, like, it was hard to find good stuff. Now there's so much good stuff that it's overwhelming, and it still seems just as difficult to track down for the avalanche of what I guess is referred to as content that is choking us out to the point of blackout every day. Like, it's interesting.
Yeah, it's, in some ways that's how I feel. I feel like people are paralyzed with the options of what's out there, and that's kind of I feel like if somebody is in a position where they have the ability to kind of like filter that stuff out to kind of some of the best, I feel like in some ways you have kind of a responsibility to the people in your life, as well as to the artists, to make sure that content, that information, that art does get out there, because otherwise there's so much of it, so much quality stuff is going to be just buried. It's difficult to find.
Well, and in keeping with trying to, like, spread the word on folks that are doing special work that maybe you don't respond to it as much, but you want for it to have an audience because you think that it's worth doing and worth spreading the word on. I mean, that gets even more difficult, because then that you're packing all of this information into your skull, waiting to give this to somebody. It's finding something beautiful at the market and going, like, I'm not gonna eat this, but I feel like somebody should have this, and I want somebody who I know I want this to go to a good home or whatever.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I do that a lot with, like, especially my radio show, because like I've been doing this radio show for years and years, and I'm listening to all of this, like, for want of a better term, everything heavy, all this heavy music, and I don't listen to all of that stuff at home all the time, but I know that it's really high quality, and maybe I check the Bandcamp on it and like 3 people have bought it, and it's been out for a year and a half, but I know, like, I identify, like, this is really high quality stuff, not really like something I'm going to listen to on the stereo while I'm at home, but I think it should be heard, and so I'm trying to keep all that in my brain, but it's a lot.
It is, and it's the reason why I'm so glad that there's a wish list on Bandcamp. Just because there is so much stuff. I could go on there, take 5 minutes, and find like 15 great bands. And it may not all be stuff that I personally vibe with, but it's, like you said, it's stuff that I feel other people would respond to pretty well. So do you feel like a personal obligation to do that, to share that content?
I mean, I feel like I've benefited from other people doing that for me, and so I do my best. I mean, I think I'm kind of, my brain is broken onto curator mode, because that is my, I guess, for like folks who listen, who are going to listen to this, like I'm a film programmer for an art house film house. I also do some booking there and everything like that. I've been a promoter of shows, and I do multiple radio shows, and so I'm always making a mixtape in my head all the time, and I'm always trying to suss out what I think is valuable work. And again, like, I mean, that distinction between like actual value versus just being a little entertained. Like, I get being stimulated by something because it's a nice trick or it's a good like roller coaster, like magic trick type thing. That's fine, and it has its place, but I know what I'm more interested in seeing thrive artistically in the world, and so when I see stuff like that, I do have a natural inclination to try to encourage it. Like sometimes that can be really embarrassing, to be honest. Like when I meet, what's a good example? I've told the story to a few people, but like when Ken Mode was playing with Austerity Program in New York, they were opening for us I think it was on the Success Cycle, and I got like, I had a moment where I felt like I might not see these guys ever again. I should probably tell them just how much their band has an impact on me, which like I don't think they were anticipating at all. Like they were, just opening for us at a show or whatever. They knew that we were fans of theirs, and they seemed to dig us too. And I've since hung out with Justin when I've been in New York and stuff like that. Like I'd consider them friends. I really like them, but like that's all the worse, right? They're friends of ours, right? They're nice, and they're nice people. But I have to tell them, like, you guys, this, like, I'm really, really moved by this music. And so I feel, and sometimes I think to the discomfort of other people, I'm credit where credit's due to a fault almost. And so, like, if I can tell you that you've done good work, or if I can pass that along in any meaningful way, even, like, I mean, within my meager ability too, right? Like I'm not, it's not like I have the world's ear or anything like that, but I can do what I can do. I'm just some asshole from Saskatoon, so it doesn't really like I'm not I don't know who has influence. I don't even know who has influence in this world anymore, but Howard Stern.
Oh yeah, there we go. Howard Stern, we're coming for you.
Who's even on the radio anymore? But
I don't even know.
Yeah.
Oh, Jamie Jasta. There we go.
That's the hate breed guy.
Hate breed guy.
Yeah,
He's got a podcast.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. There you go. I am not Jamie Jasta. So, I can't tell the world, like, the Austerity Program is better than whatever you're listening to right now, and you should listen to them. But I will tell anybody that I think needs to hear that very thing, and I will tell them if I think I might only have one opportunity to tell them, like, you make music that really, really like clicks with me. I'll tell them that. And like, there's been certain like local bands in Saskatoon who have never played outside of the city limits almost, that have like maybe made a song or two that have really worked. And I'll if they work for me, it's the same as is any other work of art that I've seen in in the Tate Gallery or something in my like any or like world class bands were playing some festival, and I get to see some enormous band that means the world to me. I'm maybe just as moved by this 3-piece punk rock band that has this one song that really, really gets me every time, and I'll tell them that. So, like, I mean, I feel a bit of a responsibility insofar as trying to lend some encouragement to people who don't, like, because I know what it's like to go for years without feeling like anyone's listening.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And I still sink into that, like, very regularly. Again, like, I think Adolyne's in a better spot than it's been in quite some time. But like, I mean, I frequently feel like we're working in a vacuum, and I feel very strong about the stuff, very, very strongly about the work we're doing. But I get to hear more about. I hear more compliments about songs that Ken Mode did that I didn't even get to record on than I do about Adolyne some days. Like, like people will go like, oh yeah, I really liked that thing you guys did on a tribute record, and I have to go like, I didn't even get to play on that. And I get, there's stretches where I have to field more of those compliments than I do like, you know, Adolyne related stuff. So I mean, I know what it's like to feel anonymous, and you know, if I think people are doing important work, I want them to know that they are, and that they should be, you know, like maybe they won't make music past this year, but while they've made music that is mattered to me. I don't know.
Honestly, like giving people compliments, like sincere compliments, is honestly one of the most. It's really underrated. You know, that's something that I personally found. I had somebody post like a 5-star review of one of my records that I did, and I was like having such a bad day, and I saw that, I was like, oh, this warms my heart. And it, you know, that compliment can be enough to make that artist or whoever say to themselves, you know, maybe I am doing something that has value. You know,
I agree.
I mean, just having that encouragement, absolutely, I think can mean the world to somebody, especially, well, I mean, you know, in your position where you're not really getting the feedback for Adolyne. I think it's criminal in a way, you know, because that band is great.
No,
and
thank you.
Yeah, and I think that, you know, that influence really shows on the later Ken Mode records, and I think it's.
I'll take it. Thank you.
Yeah, no, I heard Adolyne, and then I compared that to some of the other Ken Mode records that you were on, and I was like, wow, this makes perfect sense. Makes perfect sense why you're in this band. So.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate that, because my space in that band is very interesting to me, insofar as I don't feel like that's a discussed thing. I don't think that we ever like. I don't think that like getting, you know, my chocolate and their peanut butter has ever really been discussed in terms of like it there being an audible crossover in that way.
Well, no, like I think Jesse, he has a very particular way of writing on the guitar. There are, I don't know how to describe it, but he has a very specific sound. And
you should stand in the room while we're working on music. It is wild. I don't think he properly assesses himself as a guitar player and realizes what a weird creature he is. But watching the way his brain puts riffs together, especially with, like, in a lot of cases on like Loved, for instance, like a lot of it will, like, you know, if it starts with a bass riff that I come up with and he starts working over top of it, it's never anything in a million years I would have thought to have done. But some of the stuff that sounds like chaos and is just atonal, like this atonal violence, is very orderly, and it sounds like kind of almost non-repeatable, is something that he works on to the point where he has complete control over.
Yeah.
And while he's working on it, it's wild to watch him put music together. It's very cool.
No, I don't know how many other people feel this, but I can definitely hear in the music that it's very organized and meant to be written, composed that way. Yeah. And I feel like some people would take that as kind of like a maybe a backhanded compliment, like, oh, hey, you wrote that on purpose. But no, I think the way that it's structured is very important to how the way that I hear Ken Mode music, in that it's composed. So but yeah, I honestly, he's doing things on the guitar that I don't really I think are more like, I don't know how to describe it, like textural. Like he's just abusing his guitar in a way. He's making purposeful non-music. That makes sense.
Hold on, are you still there?
Yeah, I'm still here. Can you hear me?
I just cut out for a second there.
Oh, okay. But yeah, no, the way that those records are written, to me, it's very purposeful in how they're constructed.
Yeah, there's nothing's left up to chance. I can confirm that from the writing end of things. It's all it's all labored over for sure.
Yeah. So you were talking about Adolyne. You've got a few things coming up. What's next on the horizon?
Well, it's I mean, I almost shouldn't be discussing it as though it's coming up fast. It feels like it is because we just got to the end of an enormous workload that it was. I mean, I shouldn't be behaving like it's a relief because it's not over yet. But we did a session in late January, early February with Craig Boychuk that was basically everything that we have worked on since the last record. We've been we haven't been working on a new record in earnest that entire time, but we have been working on a new record for a long time, and by the time we got to the end of the writing cycle, we realized we have 2 records worth of material. So we recorded all of it, and we don't really know, like, I have a little bit of a want of a better term, a little bit of a vision for it, and how I would like to see it all released. And I do think that it is all one conversation. I think that it's one giant thing, and people keep joking about a double LP. That is not going to happen. No one can afford that, and no one's going to finance that.
Come on, just start a Kickstarter.
Yeah, right. No shit. That would be such a sad Kickstarter. But
I mean, not done. I'll chip in $10.
But yeah, we're not like the actual hard part. Well, I shouldn't say the hard part. The hard part for the band proper is done now, which is we all the main tracking is done, and that ended up being very. The whole thing was kind of odd because we lost our bass player, I guess would have been last summer now, or like maybe it was fall, and we made the decision, like we had a bunch of talks about how we wanted to move forward, and basically at that point I had been writing all of that the bass material anyway, so we decided to track it with me playing bass, and then I just overdubbed my guitar later. We typically record live off the floor, and we did that for this as well, but I just went back and did my guitar afterwards. So it was a really intense session for me because it was, I had to go over 2 records of material in 5 days on 2 separate instruments, and it was and luckily I saved myself I take way too long doing vocals. I take a really, really, really long time doing vocals, and I'm really, really picky about, like, I'm changing lyrics all the way down to the wire, and just like I tinker a lot, and we've figured out a way over the years between me and Boychuk that I can do it all on my own, and take my time doing it, which is probably not like, if anyone was waiting on this thing to come out, this would be a bad thing, because there's no real deadline to get it finished. It's clipping along. I'm getting work done on it, which is good. Like, I've done a few major changes that have, I think, made doing the tracking the vocals a little bit better, just from a tech front and everything like that. And so we've gradually made it so that it's getting better. But it was a really, really painful birth to get all the way down to a point where we even had just those main tracks done. Like, it was a really painful batch of music to create in a lot of ways. So having it entirely out of my system, I hope it's been rough, but it's getting there. So I'm when I am finally ready to do this thing, I hope I have enough left in me that I still want to support it properly. But it's a lot of music. So for the 10 people who really, really, really love this band, like, they've got a lot of music coming from us in their future, and we've got a bunch of like stuff shelved that we've wanted to do releases for that have been kind of little projecty stuff that we might release as well. Like, there's an excess of, like, I don't know, 2.5 hours of music we could release in the next year or so.
Oh wow!
That, there's a few things, like even a leftover track from our last record that we didn't release. That's a 20-minute song that I was waiting for the right opportunity to put out, and it just never came up. And the longer we don't release it, the more I get weird and precious about it. We've got that. Then we've got another unreleased 20-minute track. So like those alone make up 40 minutes, right? So like, I mean, it's just we have a lot of stuff that we like a lot, and we're trying to figure out the best way to put it out, and we just haven't been able to wrap our heads around it yet.
Yeah, well, I mean, I know I'm definitely looking forward to checking it out, and I know that once I force everybody to listen to it, they'll be super excited about it.
I hope so. I mean, I think I hope. I'm not just kind of living in the like kind of residual buzz of having done it so recently, but I think it's good. I mean I know we worked really hard on it. That's all I can kind of say. I think that the three of us really as a band really taxed ourselves to make it happen, and I know from my perspective in terms of really running myself ragged to try to do something that reflected, I suppose, just whatever was going on at the time, that I went way out of my way to try to do something really honest, and I think that we pulled that off at least. Honest doesn't always equate with great. I mean, Lulu may have been dramatically honest to those guys, so who knows?
So without going too deep into the weeds about it, is there anything that you feel comfortable letting us know about the album, like conceptually or like musically?
Musically, I'm actually really there's not much I can say about it insofar as I don't really know what it sounds like, and I've had this difficulty for the band's entirety. I don't know from other people's perspective what kind of music we're making, because I've gotten such contrasting reviews of what it is that we're doing, that I'm a little confused about it, and I don't want it to get into my head that we're this type of band or that type of band too much, because I don't want it to start steering, and so I haven't really taken that too seriously. But I have noticed that a lot of people that do like the best reviews we've had have always really swerved around talking about the type of music we're making, and they just talk about the music. Like, and when I say best reviews, the ones that I enjoy the most, like are ones that maybe talk about the severity of the music or something like that.
Oh,
which is no help when you're trying to sell the band, because you can't go like, oh, we sound like ISIS or whatever. I don't know why I picked them out, but it doesn't help to but I mean, it means more to me to hear that type of feedback than it does to hear like, oh, these guys sound like Wasp or whatever. Like I just like I like that, but I don't really know what to say musically about what this record is versus what the last one was, because I have a loose understanding of what the last record is. I have an even looser understanding of what these two batches of music are. I don't really know what we're doing. So
what we're looking at is basically free jazz. There we go.
I mean, maybe, I don't know. Like, I mean, our drummer is a jazzer at heart. He's a school jazz drummer, so that's in the mix.
There we go. Free jazz.
Yeah.
New Adolyne is free jazz. There we go.
So as far as that is concerned, like, I mean, I don't even know if it's like, if there's moments of it probably being a little harsher. I mean, that's so stock though. Like, I mean, to say like, oh, it's heavier, but it's also more melodic, and it's like, I mean, I really don't know. I honestly don't, and I wish that I did, because it would be easier to get people amped about listening to it if I was able to speak to it. But it's I think and hope that it's far and away the best batch of music we've ever created, but I don't really exactly know what it sounds like. And the few people that have heard any of it, like, I think when we were working on it, Craig Boychuk, who is like basically like a member of the band in my mind at this point, because he's somebody he's worked so closely with us, and he's somebody who really does seem to get it, whether that's a good thing or not. But he was laughing at one thing and saying that he thought that we were blackened math rock, and I said that to somebody else who had heard some of it, and they were like offended that he had said that. He's like, that's ridiculous. I would never say anything like that. So those are my two like reviews so far. So I mean, I have nothing to work with on that front. As far as content is concerned, it is since the writing of it picked up exactly where the last one left off. It isn't, I would say, in spirit, too far off from what the last record was. Save maybe I want to say a touch bleaker. It's I think a little less connected to the world than the last record was. And its concerns are, I think, a little less grounded on Earth. That sounds really pretentious, but it's just true. It is. I mean, there are things about like having like extended existential conversation that can come off as a little on the juvenile side when being discussed aloud, but that is what largely it is. It's conversation that I don't have the space to have with anyone else. It's, a lot of discussion that makes people uncomfortable, and no matter how close someone is to you, they don't really want to hear that coming out of your mouth, so they change. You can see them getting awkward and changing the subject or whatever. And like, I mean, I kind of got over that many years ago. I started understanding that there's a reason why so many of the philosophers that I'm a little wrapped up in and were shut-ins and people that didn't get invited to parties. I understand that because nobody wants to have these conversations. So there's a lot of that in the mix, which is not to say that, like, I mean, it's I think I've not struggled, but I've gone out of my way to not be too clever lyrically over the years. I think that there was one point in time where I wanted quite badly to be pithy and have these again terribly clever ways of discussing the things that were going on in my head, but I'm a lot more wrapped up in making sure that it's as honest as it can be and making sure that I'm not maybe, no matter how embarrassing some of the content is, not preventing myself from doing that, because I don't think I'm getting anywhere if I'm going like, well, I feel this way, but I'm only going to go 85% of the way there because this might be an awkward conversation at some point in time. Like, that doesn't functionally make any sense to me. So a lot of it is kind of out in the ether a little bit. Like, it's less, like, I'm not talking about the government or anything like that. Like, I don't have there's very rarely a target, because I think that if my preoccupations had targets, then I would go and deal with them. I would, I wouldn't, some of these problems wouldn't be problems because I'd go and fix it. You spill something on the counter and you clean it up. And a lot of this stuff is a little bit beyond that. There's a few things that have gotten into the mix in terms of like just tragedies in my life, I guess, that have informed the tone an awful lot. And there's a few moments where they have very explicitly found their way into the lyrics, and I had to make a decision about whether I wanted to let it lie that way and let it be like, if you know me, you'll know what that's in reference to, but if you don't know me, you'll have, it's covertly specific, because it seems like a broad statement, but if you know me, you'll know how specific it is. So there's some of that going on as well. And again, like, I mean, I'm almost more interested to see how that bounces off of a lot of people, because I think when you make those types of statements, those are the types of statements that if, if there is any truth in them, then I think folks might not read them exactly as I intended, but that's how you find truth in art. You're never entirely, I mean, we're not finding uniform truths in each other's art. You can't do that. Yeah. It means you're not bringing any of yourself to the table, and if you're not sacrificing any of yourself to the narrative or whatever it is that you are engaging, and then you're not really, you're not being present for it either. So speaking in specifics, I mean, if we ever talk again about this stuff, like, I can always and will always speak directly to lyrics. If someone asks me about like something specifically, I will talk about it, and they might regret it because I might talk about it all night. But because I'm not embarrassed by anything. If I am embarrassed about it, then I feel like it's that much more important for me to maybe undress it a little bit and figure out. It's the same as what we were talking about earlier about music. Like, I'm not embarrassed about the records I like because I know that they mean something to me. And I wrote this down and turned it into something because it meant something to me, and because maybe like this notion was killing me, or I felt like it was killing me, or was just fogging my mind, or just kind of like choking out all of my cognitive ability, because if I don't write this down and get it out, then I don't have the fortitude to go and make a sandwich or whatever it is and keep my body going, like that type of thing. So I'm really fatalistic when it comes to concepts and content, because I have enough of it going on that it's all. I mean, making art in general is like it's maintenance in terms of like, if I'm going to be here and maintain a human life, like I need to do this or else I can't keep it all straight. And I arguably don't do a great job of keeping it straight, even though I'm doing this. This is just the best way I know how to process it. So
yeah, absolutely. So I mean, obviously I gotta talk about the influences. Do you feel like, because of the pandemic, I'm not saying that it necessarily had a direct influence, but do you think that with all of the isolation that we've been going through for the past, like, 15 months almost, do you think that had some of an impact on what you were writing and how you brought it to the table?
Zero. Absolutely none. A lot of it is pre-existing. I think that in some cases, the pandemic has helped insofar as a lot of the noise outside of my front door hasn't been able to find me, and it's given me time to stare at the wall long enough to find that that line I've been looking for, or to if a song was missing some kind of a melody and I knew it was out there someplace, it gives me an extra hour, because I don't have to be up for work tomorrow morning. It gives me an extra hour to stare at the ceiling and find it and come about it honestly. And so if anything, I mean, it's had a positive impact. I have to, which has been like, I was just talking to somebody about this that I bumped into on the street, a friend of mine who I've known since I was 12, yesterday, because we almost felt like we were having a secret conversation, because we are two people who are not. I mean, everything to do with the pandemic has been, varying. Everyone falls on that scale of, how it is that they are suffering and what it's psychologically doing to them. Mm-hmm. And I understand that for most people this has been a negative thing, but for somebody who, I think that ethically and maybe emotionally has been receding from the world the way I have been for so long, that I almost needed it sounds stupid, but I almost needed a break, and it forced me to take one. Yeah. And I think that as a result, like, a lot of work has gotten done. In terms of the actual content, like, I don't feel like I miss people, like certain people, and I miss certain things, but I don't think that I miss the world the way in which a lot of other people do, and the way that people do almost a little more uniformly. Like, they're aching to be out in public, and they're aching to touch each other and all this stuff, and I don't. I'm not missing that quite as much, because I don't. I can make the most of my time. I was already disgusted with myself before this all happened. I was already acutely aware of myself in a way that I think a lot of other people have been forced to spend time with themselves in a way they were not prepared to and hadn't had to in so long, that they found in a lot of cases that they can't stand themselves, and so they need to be back out and they need to be distracted. And I don't. I just, it's been so many years since I've been distracted properly by the world, that it will, it will do me no good for, the summer festivals to open back up again, so that I don't know who the singer from Our Lady Peace can go and headline something out in the park or whatever. Like, that doesn't that's not going to deliver me from an existential crisis that I've been dealing with for like 15 years, right? Like, it doesn't matter. So in terms of the actual it's affected my process in that I've gotten a lot of work done because I'm not being badgered by the world. Yeah. But in terms of content, like, I'm not preoccupied with what other people are doing. So it hasn't found its way. Not a single word has been affected by what's going on outside, I don't think.
Well, I mean, when you bring up the pandemic and how you guys were having a secret conversation, honestly, I think a lot of people, if this were under slightly different circumstances, I think a lot of people would be taking a little bit more advantage of the situation. This isn't to denigrate like the health crisis that is currently ongoing.
Absolutely not. Yeah, and I don't want to be misconstrued when I'm talking about like when I'm partway through what I was saying there, I was realizing me talking about like receding from the public, like emotionally and everything like that. Like, I'm not taking that back, but I don't want that to sound like that sounds like verging on the territory of like I'm receding because I don't agree with how something's being handled or something.
Oh yeah, no.
I'm not on that side of it.
No. That's definitely not what the way I interpreted it.
Okay, good.
But I think a lot of people have had that similar sort of conversation with themselves and with others where they're like, I'm feeling normally pretty introverted, and the pandemic, aside from the fact that we are trapped inside our homes, the pandemic hasn't affected them, or it's even positively affected them, because we have adapted to certain new lifestyles where we aren't filled with as much external noise, where we're allowed to go off on our own ways for a little bit. We're allowed to investigate ourselves internally, and some people have appreciated that. And I'm not saying that I absolutely, the health crisis is just terrible, but I hate to say that there's kind of like a
bit of a fringe benefit.
Because I've been able to kind of like investigate certain aspects of my life. I've been able to look for other work that's positively affected me. I've been able to spend more time with my family, and it feels very nice to be able to indulge in my own work. Even because of the pandemic, I've started this show, and it feels like there's a bit of a guilt to appreciating that, because so many people have suffered because of it.
Well, I think that you just have to, again, I think we're two people who are both being very careful to try to not minimize the ramifications of what has happened. And I mean, just because I've benefited from the circumstances doesn't mean that I wouldn't obviously, trade it in so that everyone was alive again. And people absolutely. Of course I would lose all of this work that only, maybe 5 people in the entire world are going to connect with, and like it doesn't. If I live or die unfulfilled or whatever is of no consequence to the world. Like the work I do is enormously selfish, so I can keep the greater good in perspective. So I definitely but if I'm going to sit around and be maudlin about it just because the world is the way that the world is, like with a lot of stuff I don't have control over, and lose all of that time that I could be working, like that is an enormous waste to me. And to like be dishonest and say like that I've just been spending all my time really like worrying about the world. I mean, I'm not gonna lie and say that I have been. Maybe I'll I'll regret it later. Maybe I'll think that I was really selfish throughout this period, but I'm not going to lie and say that I haven't been. I've watched, like since what is it, like late January, I've watched almost like 200 movies. I've enjoyed myself so much, and I've been really like, I feel like expanding my palette, and I've been doing a lot of strategic art consumption and trying to, I've been doing the most with the time that I have right now, because when the world's back on, I don't have this kind of time, and I make the most of this time when I have it, and so I'm going to make the most of it right now.
Yeah, I just think it's horrible that to arrive at this situation that we've had to go through this. So it's just really unfortunate. So
it is, yeah. And I'm not. I'm working like with my day job. Like we are, like our theater is a venue and everything like that too. And we're ostensibly like the stuff that we do is built around gathering. It's gatherings. We're built around community and bringing the public together. And it's the last thing. Like we have decided that responsibly we don't feel good about it, even though we could in theory be bringing people in, like Scotiabank Theater's still open, trying to get people to come out and see fucking Mortal Kombat or whatever. And we're a 430 seat theater, so like we could be doing the type of stuff I usually do and running weird little art house pieces that only like a very small number of people are going to come see anyway, and we could do it safely. But overall, like that's the wrong message, and we've decided that responsibly we're not with that. It's we don't feel good about it, and so we're okay being on hold for the time being, and we'll do that until we feel responsible about it. So yeah, like I'm definitely aware of and paying attention to what's going on publicly, but I still have my ailing mind to deal with too, and like if I run out of concern for the public by 3 p.m. in the day, like I've got a lot of day left to work on my shit, and if I'm just going to like try to worry about the world, then like that's disingenuous too, and a lot of people are doing that.
Some people really are, and it's it's just like I don't want to go into detail. I think we've seen enough of that activity out there. Yeah. And that's why right now I think it's so important to focus on the positive things that are out there that are bringing us together, which is art, music, that sort of thing. Speaking of music, I have to ask, obviously, because if anyone's listening to this, they're going to want to know. Ken Mode, is there anything that you can talk about on that front?
We are trying to figure out how to best navigate what to do in terms of recording. We have been writing like crazy, and we've got a ton of music that it's funny because I would be being quiet about this were it not for how public Jesse's been being about it. We are aiming to do 2 records worth of material with our next session, which I don't know if that's him trying to top Adolyne or not. I'm happy to do it because that means that between the 2 bands, I'm potentially sitting on 4 full lengths of music coming out of 2021, which is very exciting to me. But we're trying to make it so that we can record with Andrew Schneider again, who did Loved, as we got on with him really well, and we thought that he really sonically got the band, and we had a blast hanging out with him. He's a really, really swell guy. But that's a border issue. So we had intended on working a little bit earlier in the year, and we're now pushing the session back to try to accommodate him, and we're just keeping our fingers crossed that the vaccine stuff is all sorted out on time, and we've kind of like been working on what our plan B, plan C's are in case he can't make it, but we're doing our best to accommodate a situation in which we do basically the exact same session style that we did for the last record, because it was comfortable. We had all the right people there. It was a dream session. It was really, really great. And as far as like the tunes are concerned, it'll be a very different record, but I think that everyone's kind of used to that. Okay, yeah, no, I think that the big like Jesse start as a starting point kind of seems to be at a different place with like this will be my third album cycle with these guys, and it seems like he has it's hard to describe what it is that, like, you always know that you're starting at a point where he has a very distinct idea of what it is that he wants to do, but he doesn't know how to elucidate on that immediately, or at least that's been my experience. Which is great, because, like, from the perspective of somebody who I've been in at least one other band situation where I feel like I've been trying to be as valuable of a support role as I possibly can be to somebody who I feel has a really strong vision that I believe in, and so I want to be there to, you know, assist as much as possible. And if he thinks that what I am working on fits into the vision, which seems to be like I you know, like a lot of the material I brought to the table this time around seems to be factoring in well enough that it's, you know, it's making sense in concert with what he's doing. That's great. But a lot of sometimes, you know, like I'll think something is a complete shoe-in and totally makes sense with this direction we're going in, and he'll kind of go like, well, that's not really it. And it's interesting. It's kind of exciting, a little frustrating sometimes, but I think that it won't be as much of a surprise to people who keep track of Ken Mode and Jesse on a regular basis, because he has been posting a lot about the process and some of the extra instrumentation we're bringing in, which in large part has to do with, like, you know, more like a lot of keyboard gear and stuff that he's been bringing on. I guess people who are following that won't be surprised at all, because, you know, he posts riffs every now and again, and he posts, you know, he does post-process stuff, so those folks won't maybe be quite as surprised. But if you only, you know, like, wait for the record to come out and find out what it is, then it might be a little bit of a shock. I think that the way the last couple of years have been wearing on him are in such a way that I think that it's if we're looking at, like, you know, the original pieces of Shane and Jesse as Ken Mode, I think that they are doing things that they haven't done before, and I think, like, as somebody who I can always take a step back and be excited for the band in a way that I can't with something like Adolyne. And I really appreciate and dig what they are doing as individual players and as creative minds. I think it's really exciting and really cool. I've been on this ride with them before in terms of not really knowing what people are going to make of what it is that we're doing. I think that there's some stuff that, to me, I think is like, it's easiest when it comes to stuff I didn't write this riff, and I just know that I think it's really good. I can stand back and really appreciate how great I think that is, and how I don't understand how someone wouldn't dig this. We have a lot of moments like that, but then there's also stuff that I think will be challenging for it's kind of success all over again, in terms of, like, well, the black t-shirt crowd might hate this. And going, but do we like it? Yeah, we do. We like it very much. So it's difficult to, like, I mean, talk in bullet points or in, like, kind of. I think it's I would say overall it's like the moodiest thing that the band's ever done, for sure. I think that it's a very it's an interesting type of downtrodden that we haven't done before. I want to use words that aren't very helpful. Like, there's something about it that when I say something like deep, I don't mean like it's really, really heady. I mean, there's something that I know, because I've been around for the process. I know that the digging that has taken place in order to reach this music has been very, very it's been a really earnest process. And I feel very fortunate to have been involved in it, and I think that the music is really strong, and I hope it's the same as the Adolyne thing. I know I sound like a broken record. I hope people like it as much as we do, because I think it's very good. Or I hope it is. But it will I think it is going to challenge some of the people that come to Ken Mode for a very particular thing. Like, it's not, I mean, I think that we're so deep into the band's history at this point that I think that anyone who's a longtime fan will know not to anticipate Love 2, or that we're going to be, we just don't really ever seem to go back to the well.
Yeah.
And that is an active, constant concern from the creative minds involved in the band. Like, they like are repulsed by the idea that we would do that again. If it's been done already, it's stale and we can't go back to it. But that said, I mean, to someone who's casual, they would hear all of it and go like, this all sounds the same. Who gives a shit? So it's I think it's audibly it's still very much Ken Mode in a way that only Ken Mode can be that band. But I think that its intent and vibe and the color palette is just completely different than anything that the band's done before.
That's great. Well, it sounds very exciting, and I'm definitely going to be looking forward to it. Yeah. And I can't wait to be shocked and disgusted by it.
Well, I hope so. Like, I mean, hopefully it's not just boring. I don't know. Who knows? Like, I can't. I mean, again, like that comes back to that. I know it sounds really tired, but it comes back to the honesty factor of, if you're not going to make the record that you want to hear, then like you're already starting at a disadvantage. And if you're not making music that you want to hear, you're not making honest music, I hope you're disappointed in the music you're making. I hope you're embarrassed in a year's time. Make something honest, or like, I don't want to hear it. And I know that this stuff means something to us, and that we get to, like, I'm going to stand by this stuff and be proud of it when we're done with it. Yeah.
Well, that's great. I mean, that's all you can really do as an artist.
Yeah, mean, that's what people should aspire to do. Like, I mean, it's not a. I feel like you need to say that out loud constantly, but you shouldn't have to, because it should be the most obvious thing. You shouldn't be being an artist if you are doing it disingenuously. And like, I mean, in the time of being trying to strike that balance between being an artist and being a content creator, I mean that like it does honestly turn my stomach. This notion that we're going to start taking advice from people, from non-creatives who stand to make money off of the work we're doing, and who say, well, we don't care if it's good work or not, we just want it every 3 months. Like, that's repulsive to me, and consequently they think I'm dead weight, and I am to them. I'm not ever going to be useful to people who, like, no one's going to make money off of me. That's a silly thing. And so that's a non-communication and a non-conversation, and I don't, we shouldn't engage one another, but it does make it so that it's when I'm talking to other artists who maybe have careerist aspirations, which like that they just want to be in a different line of work than me. When I have to talk to folks like that, because I was up for an industry award a couple of times, and so they want to know more about that because they think that I'm cut from the same cloth. And it's like, well, no, I've incidentally lost 2 awards for music that I've made that I feel really strongly about. I wasn't thinking about trophies when I was making music, when I was writing a song instead of killing myself. That was not the concern. So this notion of like putting the audience first and all that stuff is just kind of just repulsive to me.
I think especially with Ken Mode and Adolyne, I don't think you can say that the audience is the largest consideration. That sounds really horrible to say, is like the audience is not even considered, but it's like,
well, but don't you want to listen to music that is not like that? It's like, I mean, it sounds so goofy and like over the top, but I mean, you want the purest thing, right? You want the purest you can get. And I don't, if I want to listen to, in a lot of cases, like when I need music the most, it's when I'm at in an extreme moment or something like that. I don't want to think about that artist calculating this piece for to stimulate me. I want to think about them, like if they're trying to express to me that they're just barely holding on by a thread. I mean, I would like to think that I have invested enough time in art and I suppose building my bullshit meters that I will know whether they are constructing something to stimulate me and make me feel good, or something that they did out of an honest experience. And I only want the honest experience. So like, I mean, as an audience member, I don't really want to be catered to. I'm not interested in that. So it sounds bad, but at the same time, I think that based on the audience that I have direct contact with and that I speak to directly from those bands, because we're not the type of bands that we don't have any like buffers between us and the people who want to speak to us. Based on talking to those people, I don't think they want us to present anything other than genuine expression anyway. Like, I don't think that they want to be catered to. I know that they want to hear, they think they know what they want to hear out of a new Ken Mode record or out of a new Adolyne record. And maybe we'll get really close to that, or maybe we'll be completely like couldn't be further away from what it is that they wanted. But if they are an in-tune person who what they're responding to isn't a scene or a set of like I do liken it to like ordering a meal, like this whole like sense of well, it's like what's going on in these movies now, where they're doing these like what are they, the Snyder cut of a film, and and all of the fans of the movie, or the people who like got this movement rolling, all are acting like this is a victory for them, and it's like, well, no, this is you going, oh, well, this isn't exactly what I ordered. My expectations weren't met. We should recut the movie. Like, what? I mean, I get it. Like, it's a different circumstance, but like the fan entitlement to what it is that they want, and this notion, like this prevailing notion that the fans are going to continue like that. Like, I mean, democratization in certain circumstances is certainly a good thing, but when it comes to the crowd sourcing art is to me, that's the antithesis of art. Yeah,
definitely. Just because, oh man, I don't know where I was going with this thought, but
that's fine.
But yeah, it's like you definitely don't want to have that be impacting your work, because then you're just pandering. Then you're compromising your vision. And like, why, if especially for like bands that are difficult, I'll put Ken Mode in that category. It feels like that out of the one thing that you can reliably expect from the band is to be challenged, to be difficult. And if you are just going in expecting that, if you are going in expecting that, if you're demanding that of the band especially, like, is that fair to the band? I don't think so.
No, and I mean, it's again, like going back to the meal thing. Like, if you go and keep ordering the same meal at a restaurant because it's reliable, like, I mean, I'm trying to think of a band that's reliable. The Ramones, maybe. No, not even that, because you know what? That's unfair. I always thought that was really unfair. The Ramones, because they evolved.
Oh yeah,
so much.
I was gonna say AC/DC. They've been.
Yeah, that's probably better.
I mean,
like, if you know that you want to keep eating that over and over and over again, then and that is what you want, then that's fine. And if you go like, oh, there's this particular spice they always use, the meal changes a little bit from time to time, sometimes it's a little saltier or whatever, but there's this really like particular spice in there that I really dig. And the spice is often the personality of the people making it, right? And like, I think that like Shane is one of my favorite drummers on the planet. He is one of those drummers that's a personality drummer that you can tell when it's him playing. Jesse, both on guitar and vocals, is somebody who's unmistakable. They are and they change what they do over time, but they are always the Matthewsons, and I think that is some of the consistency there. No matter what it is that is going on, or what they're going through, or what the preoccupation is, there is a through line there, and they don't have, to my mind, a responsibility to maintain that, but that is some of what, like, a long time fan is going to respond to. They keep coming back to if they want that particular thing, like, no one else is going to give it to them because it's such idiosyncratic music. It's those guys. And whether it's me playing with them or somebody else too, like, I mean, all the way back to their first record. Like, I mean, there are there's a through line there, and I think that's I don't think that they owe it to anybody, but in terms of like reliability, in terms of like personality, I think that they're strong enough personalities that like you know, like you're not going to get that fix from anybody else. It's got to be that band or it's nobody.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And you know, going back to what I was saying earlier about Jesse, like how he's got a very specific way of playing, like you can hear that going back years.
Yep.
Even though the band has evolved, band's changed over the years, you can still hear those roots. And you know, even from the earliest records to Loved, you can still hear that through line in there.
I agree.
And you know, I like you were saying, that's absolutely something people keep coming back to time and time again for the band. And
another good example would be somebody like you know like Steve from Today Is the Day. Somebody who he is inescapably of himself. He's surrounded himself with so many different lineups and everything like that. But if that is the worldview that you're wanting, you can reliably go to any one of their records and you are going to get an earful of Steve Austin on those records. and if you're not in the mood for it, then you shouldn't listen to any of those records. But you know, like that's the constant you're going to get, even though it, you know, the style changes so much over the years. It still very much sounds like that group and that point of view. And even if the point of view changes a little bit, it's like, I mean, I like really strong personalities and non-homogeneous heavy music, because I do think that kind of screaming at the void that someone does when they're doing it honestly, that's when they're the most naked and they are themselves, and they are just your core elements, and your core elements should be your own. They shouldn't be anybody else's. So when you get into heavy music, the majority of it is, you know, aping what's come before it, vocal wise. Like, I mean, it's all relatively, you know, replaceable, like degrees of people just making, you know, kind of monster voices and stuff like that. I don't care about any of that. It's fine. I you know, whatever. But the stuff that I respond to is like stuff that, like, half the time people don't even like it because it's so odd. Like, people don't want to hear like Chris Spencer from, you know, Unsane or whatever. Yeah. Like, I mean, he's always going to be Chris Spencer no matter what.
Oh, yeah.
I want that, and I think he's been recontextualized. Like, I think his other bands are great. I really like Sealand, and I like UXO and all that stuff. Like, if you want to get that worldview and you are responding to that day, like, there's something reliable about being able to go and pick that up and be able to do that because you respond to that. And I think that those guys, I think Jesse and Shane fall into that bracket 110%. And I have the ability to say that with some distance again, even though I've been in the band for that long. Like, I know I was a fan of the band longer than I've been in the band, so I can get away with saying that.
Absolutely. Well, I guess that's all my questions for you, though.
Great.
I'd like to thank you very much for taking the time out of your day to chat with me about music and anytime, all things art. And I'm not sure quite how to end this. Well, we're going to say thanks.
Well, yeah, and I thank you back. I'm happy to do this type of thing. I really dig this type of long the long format stuff. I think you get to the bottom of things better with this type of thing than you do with like the 10-minute interviews.